Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Um, my last video, I know I made it outdoors for a little bit, but unfortunately, the rain came back and temperatures dropped again. But looking forward to getting back outside again and making some more videos and just bringing some more content. You get a little bit of inspiration when you're kind of hiking around out there and just enjoying a little bit of nature. It's pretty amazing. Um, but anyway, without too much further ado, I'm going to kind of dive into tonight's topic, which is beware the subtle signs of manipulation. And I'd gotten this idea because, I occasionally stumble across content pretty much from multiple different platforms. I can only stand to look at some of these platforms for short periods of time sometimes because there's just such an incredible amount of just garbage advice and misinformation floating around out there. And you kind of start to get the sense, many of you that have followed my channel for any period of time, you really begin to get the sense, as I feel, that it's all basically one giant psyop. They want to bring out the worst versions of women and men and basically destroy, especially the middle class. It's a breaking down process. It's not that we don't have these dark natures and problems within ourselves, but it certainly doesn't help that it seems like it is being engineered to go this way. But to help bring to light some of this and to kind of address it, you kind of have to put the face to a name and identify and be able to articulate very clearly what it is that you're noticing going on so that you can be aware. Like the Bible verse says, be wise as serpents, yet gentle as doves. You need to be aware of what's going on out there. You really, really do. Just for even your own self-protection, because if you can describe it and you can identify it, you can avoid it. Pretty simple, right? So one of the first signs that I would say is a major sign of manipulation, it kind of goes across the board, and it's a huge one that could encapsulate a bunch of other ones all at the same time, but it's avoiding accountability, which I know many of the guys that are extremely red pill to the version of almost being black pill absolutely believe that all women throughout history always avoid accountability, and there's never one that can actually not do that. I don't particularly agree with that. I think that there are women that can be accountable, absolutely. I think it's becoming few and far between simply because of the way things are going nowadays. You literally have every single time you turn around movies that promote cheating and lying and betraying the person you're married to or engaged to, uh, all over the place on social media, Facebook, Instagram, pretty much everywhere, TikTok, anywhere you open up and take a look. You are being encouraged to, women in particular, are being encouraged to lie and cheat and engage in the worst parts of their nature that they possibly can, rather than the better parts of them that actually should be brought forward and encouraged. And I think you have to identify that. I think you have to realize that that's going on out there before you make any snap judgment of, oh, it's always been this way, because there's basically two schools of thought. There's either maybe there's capacity for people to have good marriages, or it never ever was and never ever will be. And you're basically so incredibly, nihilistic about it that you can never ever see a light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that the truth falls somewhere kind of in between. So when we're talking about avoiding accountability, basically attempting to point out something that you know is not right, something that you know is, when we're going to talk in the relationship context, we're just going to keep this in the context of a relationship between a man and a woman, but spotting these signs even from the get-go. And I've learned a lot of this from my own dating horror stories. But spotting these signs from the get-go, avoiding accountability is a major, major thing. Like if you are able to have an honest conversation with somebody, you can usually bring about some form of accountability. You can point out something that you see is going on, possibly identify the reason, and have the other person have the moral and intelligent, the fortitude of that to grasp what you're saying and realize, oh, okay, there's a reason why you don't want these things to happen. Like, say, for instance, you don't want to be with somebody who's acting single while they're in a relationship with you. You're not pointing that out to upset them. You're pointing that out because you don't want to live in the middle of that. And you need somebody who is not going to attempt to manipulate that and avoid the accountability. And now, some of the other, as I mentioned, the avoiding accountability is almost like a blanket umbrella over most of the things I'm going to mention on this list, because they all kind of fall under it to some degree. But it starts with that, the avoidance of accountability in a conversation where you attempt to pinpoint something and make it clear that you don't want to date somebody that's engaging in certain types of behavior. And then they start shifting it around and doing everything they can to avoid directly addressing the subject. Unfortunately, for a lot of women that are out there, they've been kind of conned into this whole very loose feministic, feminism type of, well, hedonism and promiscuity is just the way to go. And they're going to hold on to that. Many of the women that are out there indefinitely, they're never going to let that go. And they're going to do everything they can to get a guy locked in that's going to be a breadwinner, that's going to be a nice little simp, that's going to take care of them and allow things to be a stable life for them so they can return back to that. And this is not a condemnation of all women. Please understand. I realize that there will be exceptions to that rule, of course. But this is generally the landscape that's going on out there for you ladies, that if you're watching this and you're wondering where all the good men have gone, they've encountered women like this and they don't want anything to do with them, and understandably so. They just realize that that is going to lead their lives to ruin. Now, the next part of this would be blame shifting. And that's kind of where the avoiding accountability, kind of the next step of it, I've always noticed, has been blame shifting. They start to shift the blame onto you, like somehow it's your fault that they did something that maybe they shouldn't have done. Or it's now your fault that you have upset them in some way and they want an apology because you pointed out something that was true, that was really actually going on, and you want something to change with that. And they start to turn on the tears, which is usually a pretty big sign that they're busted. They don't cry when they're right. So that's a huge, huge sign right there. You see the tears start to come out. You see the blame shifting. That's something that you got to immediately take notice of. And if that starts to happen, you probably better run, and you probably better run for the exits as fast as you possibly can. And another major one that I want to kind of go into is oftentimes after that, and I've only seen this, I would say, I can name two examples where I've actually encountered a woman basically trying to speak to me this way, but um, I've heard of it many, many different times. And it's basically they start to treat you as if you're some kind of a child, with a condescending attitude of, well, I know better than you, and you don't have emotional intelligence. And you're just sitting there going, yeah, I just busted you doing something you're not supposed to do. And you're trying to now condescend to me and act like I don't know what I'm talking about. And it's just a major sign of deception, which I think both genders are kind of aware of when it comes to the other gender. You know when you've caught somebody doing something, you know when something is off or wrong. You get a gut feeling about it. You have a sense of there's some significant form of deception going on here, and you're attempting to uncover it and deal with it directly. And if the other person is genuine with you, they'll want to uncover and straighten anything out because they're not actively trying to do it. They're operating from an innocent mind frame. And you can tell the difference between somebody who's operating from an innocent mind frame and somebody who is not. When they start to attempt to condescend and treat you like a child, they're not operating from an innocent mind frame. And men and women view this differently. Like I've noticed that when dealing with women, it can be very easy to feel like a man is, like, I guess what they call mansplaining. And the reality is, most of the time, it gets confused with, I notice something in a type of behavior that I don't really want to have involved with myself and another person in a relationship. And I'm trying to get to the root of it and deal with it. And it feels like they kind of, they feel almost offended by it because they feel like they're being spoken down to. And they start to go into, well, I don't like your tone. And so it shifts from, it's basically the shifting of subjects. So included in blame shifting would be shifting the subject. And that has happened to me actually quite a few times, and quite a few dating horror stories that I could tell you all about that are kind of mind blowing, actually. And this was part of my red pill journey. You have to understand, for each one of us, it's a bit of a different journey because, for me, I'm in my 40s, and my first, when I was married years ago, and I went through the entire divorce. For those of you that saw the video on marriage is a scam, uh, when I went through my divorce years ago and I became aware of what the legal system was and everything, that was the beginning of sort of a red pill wake up for me. And then as I began to date, I began to understand that there was a whole new level of waking up that I was going to have to do, that I was aware of, like, oh my gosh, things are terrible out here. I mean, the level of deception was just mind blowing, and the games that were happening was just absolutely mind blowing. And you begin to become aware of it, but you don't even know how to describe it at first. And I started to come across red pill content that began to kind of open my eyes up to it, because other guys were beginning to define it. And so you now have terms that you can add to what you have as an understanding, and you begin to spot these things a lot better. And that's kind of how I began to unravel a lot of the deception and manipulation that was happening during many of the times where I had started to date people and began to discover, this is horrible. What's happening here is just a mess, and I need to get out of here as fast as possible. But it was a time, it took time. It took time to begin to unravel the manipulation that was happening, because some of it is your own self-reflection. You begin to reflect and realize, okay, what do I want that's honest and real? And then, if I'm going to have somebody in my life, are they able to be honest and real with me enough? Because, I mean, we're all human beings, but are they able to be honest and real with me enough to be able to fit into that framework and have any kind of a relationship that even has a chance of lasting into the future? And you start asking real questions like that. That's where where the rubber meets the road, really. So, one other major thing that I kind of came across, actually, with one of the horror stories that I encountered in dating was, for some of you, you know that I've done some film work here and there, and I actually over the years done quite a bit of it. And this individual was aware of an awards ceremony that we had just had, where we had done really well. We had won tons of awards. I myself had actually won several awards, and later on that week ended up telling me that, basically demeaning each award that I and my team had won, as if we didn't have any talent in those areas, as if we weren't at all like that, as if I didn't have any talent in those areas. And she was openly questioning it and kind of pushing herself as if she knew better than I did about that. And I have to say, I remember the moments where that happened, and I just was kind of in shock. I was like, what just happened here? You're trying to shoot me down. And I was beginning to become red pilled around that time, enough to the point to where I just looked right at her and I said, oh, all right, fine. I guess we don't ever have to work together ever, if you don't want to, because this person was also interested in filmmaking, not on the level that I had been doing, but they were interested in that to a certain degree. And I was just floored. I was just absolutely floored that, um, basically, it was just trying to chip away at all the accomplishments that had just been made. And I was blown away. I did not expect it at all, but it was a major eye opener, and something that I learned going forward, which, that's the major thing too, that you have to realize everybody's got to learn going forward, and there has to be patience for that. And especially even with yourself, that as you're moving forward, you have to be patient for the lessons that you learned, and not learn and learn to not beat yourself up over it. So, the last one I'm going to cover, I've actually gone into this topic on other videos, and it's called, it's just basically summing it up, false accusations, which usually are things that are threats meant to intimidate you. These threats that are usually leveled at you when you really, really start to call them out on stuff. You start to consider breaking things off, especially if you're kind of new to red pill. It takes you a while to get to this point, but then you start to realize, okay, this is bad. This whole thing's bad news. I need to get out of here. I need to be moving on. And the false accusations start coming. you know, well, I think that you did this for this reason. And they start questioning your character and your motives and everything, and things that you know that they know aren't true, but they want to engage in reputation and character destruction in an attempt to control and manipulate you. Worst case scenario of this is when they try to accuse you of something and then get the law involved, when the only thing you're trying to do is break things off with them. And they basically want absolute and utter control. And I can tell you this, I mean, when it comes down to this, you're basically in a state of warfare with this person. You are at war with this individual when this happens. Hopefully, if you spot some of these other things, you can get out before you get to this point, because it is open war at that point. They absolutely desperately want control, and they don't care what means that they have to go to get it. And you have to, no matter what it takes, I don't care if it's scorched earth, do whatever you can to get away from these individuals. And you have to block them. You have to remove them. I described, this was actually the same one that was belittling the achievements that we had done with the film awards that we had done. Um, got to a position when I ended up trying to break things off with her, which was not too long after that. Actually, pretty shortly after that, got to a point where reputation was destruction was the major thing that she was trying to do. And it was through fake accounts online, contacting people, attempting to say all sorts of terrible stuff about me. And enough people saw through it, because they're like, here's this random account that's obviously brand new contacting us to say something horrible about this guy, Steve. And the only reason I even have any of the social media stuff, just, for full transparency, just film stuff. I do. Actually, I generally find most social media pretty abhorrent, and I can't really stand it. It's great for stories and it's great for examples for you guys when we're doing videos. But to be completely honest, if I could burn all that down, I probably would. I feel like society would be exponentially better if we didn't have social media anymore. But for business purposes, it works great for my film stuff. And that's the only reason I can even stand to tolerate that sort of thing. And if ever I get to a point where I shut down doing that, well, social media will be a thing of the past for me. Um, but at any rate, yeah, the false accusations and attempting to use that, you are at war with that person. When it's gotten to that point, you must fight, fight, fight. You've got to dig in your heels. You've got to do everything you can to break off everything with them. Never connect with them again. If you can, just, I don't always per se advocate ghosting somebody, but this is absolutely a case where if you can, you should. But there are signs that show up, like many of the ones that I mentioned here, and other ones that you could probably add to the list that will show up before this sort of thing happens. And you should definitely pay attention to those. So, anyway, with all that said, make sure you like and subscribe to the videos that I've got coming up, and hit the notification bell so you see it popping up. And I look forward to bringing more videos to you guys soon, and look forward to talking to you all again soon. Have a great night.